Welcome to Off Topic but On Point. I'm Adette de Beer, and here we embrace the unscripted, the unconventional, and dare I say it, the unexpected. Because sometimes the best breakthroughs happen when you go off topic. Each episode, we dive into business, leadership, and life, exploring the moments that challenge us, shape us, and push us forward. So, whether we're tackling entrepreneurship, collaboration, mindset, or even navigating resistance, one thing's for sure, we'll always bring it back to what matters. So, get ready for candid perspectives, thoughtful insights that will keep you engaged, inspired, and maybe a little bit uncomfortable in the best possible way. As usual, I have with me my beautiful friends, Dr. Janine de Cabo, also known as the Intentionalist, and Pastor Christo Pretorius, the Expander. Let's go.
Welcome back to Off Topic but On Point, the podcast where the conversations may start anywhere, but it always lands up exactly where it needs to be. So today we're asking the question that many people are wrestling with and have been wrestling with actually for a very long time. At what point do you get to call yourself an expert? And I'm not talking about an arrogant way, not a look at me, I've arrived kind of way, but actually just being truthful in that kind of way. At what point have you lived enough? At what point have you studied enough? I think the question to ask at what point did you fail enough? Maybe you have served enough. Maybe you have solved enough problems and helped enough people. And now you can finally say, I know what I'm talking about. That's the question we want to answer because this matters. And I think especially now, for this reason, is that everybody with a ring light and maybe a Canva template and a very strong opinion can really easily position themselves as an authority online. It's cute, but it's also very dangerous, but it can really be cute. So on that note and on that side, we have got people calling themselves expert after 3 months and one good carousel. Okay, so on the other side, we have really deeply experienced people and they are still hiding behind their humility. So they're waiting for somebody else to give them permission to just go. Some people are over claiming their success and others are under owning their success. So I'm joined today by my two good friends, Christo and Odette. And we're going to sit in this tension and we're going to be like wrestling through this question. I'm sure you guys yourself has had that question at some point in your life. So what makes somebody an expert? Is it the years, results, maybe the qualifications, maybe the repetition of doing it over and over again? Maybe it's the wisdom, the nugget, recognition. You guys can tell me. When can you call yourself an expert? Or must others call you that first? Maybe one last question before we can just open, and there's no particular order because I want us to really talk through this, is the deeper question I think would be is, when does humility stop being noble and start becoming disobedient to what you've been trusted with? Because I think there's a bigger picture here. So I want to say that the mics are open, the stage is open. Let's discuss this.
Great. Well, thank you for this very intriguing topic. To the first question, when you call yourself an expert, I'm in the framework of Margaret Thatcher that said, if you have to tell somebody you're a lady, you're probably not. So calling myself an expert, I don't think it's something that I would probably do. What is an expert? For me, it's quite simple. It's somebody that has undeniable proof that they can do what they say they can do over an extended period of time. I think it's Andreas Ericsson that the research, and a lot of people based their frameworks on his research about the 10,000 hours. Once you've done something for 10,000 hours, you can probably call yourself an expert. I know Jesse Issa speaks about the 18-minute rule. If you do something for 18 minutes every day, you'll be in the top 95, or you'll be above the top 95% of people in the world. So like your top 5. Alex Ramosi speaks about the 100-hour rule, if you can do something for 100 hours consecutively. And I mean, all of those research was based on what the psychologist said. So I think it's definitely that, is that you can do what you say you can do. There's undeniable proof. And you can do it over and over again. It's not just that one-hit wonder. Funny enough, I saw the other day, what's that Gundam style song? That happened in 2012. And so like, okay, since then, like what other songs have that guy written? I mean, he's not from our neck of the woods, so maybe he has, but I mean, nothing that has blown up as much as that. So yeah, are you a one-hit wonder? Or can you put these stackable proofs on top of each other? So I think that's maybe to the first two questions, what I would say at this point in time.
I think also I asked the question, can you create predictable success? Because I think an expert can create predictable success often, and I think in various places. If I think about virality and somebody that goes viral, that doesn't make them a good digital marketer, as an example, or a good influencer. It's if they keep doing that and they keep creating it and they figure out the pattern, the how, the why am I going viral, and then they utilize that to generate more income. That for me would be like, okay, that guy is an expert. Otherwise, you just got lucky. Good
Absolutely.
post.
Absolutely. And the question also is like, are you going for views? Are you going for impact? Are you going for sales? Going for influence? I mean, what's the measurement? So yeah, it is about, predictable based upon what that person wants. So if somebody wants to hire me as an expert, quote unquote, for me, it would be, first of all, we would define like, what is the outcomes that you want? And can I deliver? Can I predict that those are the outcomes that we can deliver for you? But yeah, the truth of the matter is a lot of people are calling themselves experts. And yeah, like you said, with a nice Canva, a design, a ring light. I was walking past one of these shops the other day that had all the ring lights. It's literally just almost next to the road, like outside the Checkers. And I just looked at those ring lights and I'm like, hey, I suppose we all started there. You got a ring light and you put your phone in and there you go. And as we go along, we get some better, proper equipment.
And you get all the rings in your eyes.
Thank God I never wore glasses, so nobody could probably see my ring lights unless they zoomed into my eyes. Yeah.
Odette?
I want to start with what is an expert. Pastor C, you mentioned if you do something X number of hours, X number of day. I have made people who have 20 years of experience, and then I have made people who have experienced 20 years, the same year 20 times. So I think we need to establish what is the expert. Yeah. The second thing is that experts recognize uncertainty and are comfortable in it. Yes, there is a element of predictability, but actually predictability doesn't make you an expert. I think when we talk about real experts, if you've got to tell someone exactly that you're an expert, you probably aren't. Experts have trust before they even say they're an expert and then expect you to trust them. It's about competence. It's about integrity. You've mentioned it a couple of times in different ways. It's about consistency. It's about care, and all those things together create trust. It's not just one thing. You can't just be consistent. Consistency is not enough. And then someone needs to see that you're an expert. How do they see it? They see that you solve problems consistently with the same care, the same trust. You're not shooting from the hip, although I like that phrase. If you ask Dr. Jill, I shoot from the hip all the time. Not so. But shooting from the hip means that you walked in, you had no idea what you were doing, and you were kind of like feeling your way through it. Experts walk in, they don't necessarily know what the problem is, but they know how to find it. Yes. And once they found the problem, it doesn't mean that they have the answer. It means that they understand how to get to the answer without failing 50 times. And to that, I would say, maybe it is a function of the number of times that you've done it. But what about wisdom? There is a version of this where God has given you wisdom and you just know stuff because God has graced you with that wisdom for those things. Mm-hmm. And you may not have done it 50 million times, but you have a unique ability to discern what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. And then I think the question around humility and the fear of the Lord for me are two very similar concepts, The fear of the Lord doesn't mean that I sit here trembling in my boots. The fear of the Lord means that I recognize who he is and what he is. Humility is not downplaying your skills. It's not making yourself seem less than. That actually is pride hidden. Humility is acknowledging who you are, what skills you carry, what gift you carry adequately so that it is a gift that gets to be given to the world. That's humility. If you are walking around as an expert or I'm not an expert because I'm being humble, but you have the skill, you have the ability, you genuinely solve problems consistently, people trust you, and you make life better and you walk around saying that you're not an expert, that's pride because you're walking around with that's my soapbox. That's pride, that's not humility.
I love that. I think, in other words, if we take what we said now, time does matter, the time that you spent on it, but also you could be looking at the same Excel spreadsheet, nothing wrong with Excel. You can look at the same Excel spreadsheet for 20 years and still not be an expert at it because that's the one thing that you've done and maybe you just do it every day, but you can't solve problems around it. You're just doing that one thing. So you're basically feeding or entering data. So I think time matters and intentional practice matters more, I would say. So it's not just about the time. Feedback-driven practice is important. Repetition is important. But also, repetition without correction can just make us consistently average. So we need that correction. We need people to come back and say, that works, that doesn't work, and then we go at it again. If we look at skill acquisition and like the levels of skill, it's simple. I mean, if you've played any kind of TV games when you were a kid, you would have known that you can choose. Am I a novice? Am I an advanced beginner? Am I competent? Can I do this or not? And I think life works the same. You need to, in the area, and I think we are experts in areas, not everything. So in the area that you want to become an expert, you need to decide where you currently are. Am I a novice? Maybe I'm an advanced beginner. I know a little bit more than the person starting out. Okay, I'm competent. I can do this. I'm more than competent. I'm proficient maybe. And then I become the expert. So there's stages that you go through. And I think when you get to expert, it's not just anymore about knowing the rules. Now you can do deep pattern recognition because you figured this out. If this thing goes this way, you know what to do. If that thing goes that way, you also know what to do. And I think that intuition is built from experience. Yes, wisdom on top of that, I think that is exactly what we're praying for and what we're asking for. But once you've had that pattern recognition, your experience will also help you with the intuition and the experience on what to do next. And then you have the ability to respond into complex situations in a better way than most people. And I think that's what makes you the expert. I think to be able to lead the room in difficult conversations as well. If I ask you this, you've worked deeply with alignment, with customer experience, transformation of people and businesses. How do you know when somebody is operating, and you've answered a part of that, but I'm asking more in the work that you do. How do you know somebody is operating from real experience or real expertise versus that polished positioning? Because I've seen that. I walk into a room and somebody, they say they come across as they are, but when you sit with that person for a little bit, then you realize maybe it's imposter syndrome. Maybe it's just a show. So how do you tell when it's real or not?
I look for 5 things. No surprises there. Clarity. Do they understand what they're talking about? That normally comes out in being able to make a complex thing simple. People who are polished because they read a ChatGPT thing or they've done a masterclass on how to be visible and polished generally can't explain complex things simply. The first question you should ask is the room confused? Because if the room is confused, it's because the person talking is confused. You can't relay something to someone if you don't have it yourself. So that's the first thing. The second thing is
Like, can we
consistency.
just stop? Like, can we visibly and audibly
Yeah.
clap hands for that? Like, that is brilliant. Like, we were taught, and you were part of that, is that you need to read the room. As the person, you need to read the room. So I think it's more than just reading, it's now understanding. That's expert level. Interpreting and then
Absolutely.
acting on that. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Consistency. I like consistency. The consistency for me is the consistency in the fruit that they produce. So have they produced reliable outcomes over time? We've mentioned it before. And were they, the thing is, do you know what I dislike about people with MBAs? And I'm sorry for those of you who have MBAs. This is specifically for Masters in Business Administration done through a school of leadership. The Masters in Business Administration requires you to work with a group of people. That's what it needs, right? Many of the people announce that they have an MBA. We're part of a really cool group. And when you're part of that group, will do everything because they want that credential. So if you don't pull your weight, it actually doesn't matter. As long as you've got a group of people around you who carry you. So in terms of reliable results, I don't care that you have an MBA. I want to see, how did you contribute to that result? Is it that you took people on the journey? Is it that you were able to bring people around an issue and move them forward? Were you, and you don't have to be the person that brings the solution actually, because quite often experts understand who to bring into the room to get the right solution. An expert isn't someone who places themselves on a pedestal with all the spotlights on them and look at me, I'm shining. That's actually not what expertise is. Expertise is understanding what is the right thing and the right people to get the right solution or the right outcome. That's what expertise is. The third thing is character. How do they treat people? How do they treat people in the room? How do they treat people, especially when you walk in to, for example, a big event and this person's speaking? I like to look at how they treat the people that are in the audience. Are they mingling with them? Do they walk around like snooty? Do they come across as standoffish? You can tell whether or not you can connect with someone by the way that they walk and interact with other people. And I like to look at that and go, can I interact with this person? Can that person interact with the lady that's bringing us the tea? How do they treat those people? Because experts don't have to be chops.
Beautiful.
And I'm sorry, if you're an expert and you have zero personality, then I question whether you're an expert, because an expert, again, to your previous point, can read and understand the room. The fourth thing is, are they curious? Are they curious to listen to what other people are saying? I don't need you to listen to me to know that I know what I'm talking about. There is room for me to hear what you have to say and go, I've actually never thought about that. That's a brilliant perspective. Because it doesn't matter how much experience I have or how much I've studied or how much I know. There is always something I don't know. There is always something I haven't learned yet. There is always some version of this conversation where you know more than I do. Do I accept that and keep quiet and learn? Or am I the one saying, you don't know what you're talking about. There's no space for you. Because experts know that you don't know everything. That's why you're an expert. And then obviously contribution. So has their work really helped people? Or is it just that one carousel post? Is it just that, what is the fruit of the stuff that they've done? And if you've got all 5 of those things, then I pay attention. Then I'm like, yes, teach me, a wise one.
I like that. Pastor Shi, have you ever seen someone with real authority that holds back because they're waiting for that permission we spoke about? What does it actually cost them to hold back?
Sorry, I'm still trying to wrap my head around these 5 filler bullet truths that was just fired. Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that I did. I think that's an incredible framework. Yeah, that's so powerful. Don't have to be a chop.
I like that.
I would say the reason why people would hold back is, I would say, perception, perspective, and our understanding of our role and function. And I'll explain it to you through a story. I had a chat with somebody actually last week. And we were speaking about humility because in the Afrikaans culture, and I can only speak for my culture, when we grew up, there was a couple of things that were said in the house. Maybe it will remind you of some early childhood, is that the Afrikaans was kinders word gesien en nie gehoor nie. Children are seen and not heard. Another thing is like when we were sitting in the adult conversation, my dad would say, do you want to count teeth? Will you tana tell? And so I don't think that they were nasty or anything. It was just that this is for
That is
grown-up
adult
conversations
conversation.
and you're not supposed to be there. And I think it's a great framework to teach kids about the importance of certain rooms and whether you should be there or not. I think that the problem we had is we were never invited into those adult conversations at a later stage. So the time never came where I could sit in that room per se. And so I grew up, and I suppose a lot of the Afrikaans people grew up with that type of a mindset. And so when I started playing cricket, we played against these posh English private schools. And the kids just had like ooze of confidence, and they would walk up to my dad and call him on his name, and they would just talk. And I would be taking 2 steps back because we're respectful, we're humble. And I think that in my life and a lot of people that I was speaking to, we've got this mindset of we should take the backseat because we should be humble. And that is arrogant, and that is, what's the right word? Let me not use the slang word we used. But yeah. And I think that is so far from the truth. Because neither am I humble by keeping my mouth, and neither are that person arrogant by speaking up. And yes, in micro instances, fair enough, there might be instances. But I think that's what's keeping people back is our past experiences or the environments we grew up in, and the way we frame the world is going to hinder us from giving the world what the world needs. Imagine Jesus just never stood up. When he was questioned or when he was challenged, he was just like, you know what? Yes, he did mention to his mom that when she wanted him to perform a miracle, he said, my hour has not yet come. But then there were times where he then stepped into what he was called to. And so when we don't step into that and when we remain silent, the world is missing out on the essence that has been given for, whatever faith you are or whatever you believe about life. I do believe that every person has been placed upon this earth for a specific purpose. And there is a value inside of every single person that all of us need. And if you don't have value, then you would not have been here, in essence. And so, yes, when we don't give the world what we carry and what we have and what we've accumulated, the world miss out, but we miss out to express that, because in expressing that, you then realize what it is you have and you have the ability to give more. And I mean, that's where capacity comes from. Capacity is simply the amount that somebody can contain, but also the amount that somebody can produce. And if you don't know what you contain, you will never know how to produce it. And once you start producing it, more will flow. We are like rivers. And it's like living water that starts flowing the moment you start speaking. So those are the two things with regards to your question that I've personally seen in my own life. And I'm actively working towards that. Maybe somebody says, but okay, how do I then tell people what I have without being arrogant or seen as arrogant? I'll use the words of the wise Gary Vee, and I will just say, don't. Tell people what you know, just don't be arrogant about it. Mm-hmm. And it comes down to exactly those 5 points that Odette mentioned, is that can you make sure that when you tell people about what you know, that you can do it with clarity, that the complexity in your mind, you can articulate it in a simple and a simplistic way for people to understand. Can there be consistency? Do you have character? Treat people with the same respect that you want it to be treated. And it's like, I think there's a difference between expert and genius, because what I've just found is somebody that I would equate as a genius, that are like just they understand things at a quicker and a better rate than other people. It's difficult for them to explain that in a simple way to other people, and hence they come across as arrogant, but also they don't speak well to people because nobody understands me, and so therefore nobody's on my level. And I do think is that it comes down to that humility aspect, and the character aspect is that although you know things at a higher rate and a higher level, can you just come down to us mere mortals and in a simple way explain that to us? Curiosity and the aspect of always being able to listen to other people around you, because you will pick up these things. And this is what I've realized is when I listen to other people, there's only a couple of things that everybody is saying. Like the principles that we think we discovered, that's been in existence for many, many years. We are simply echoing somebody else's work. In all fairness, like we're simply echoing somebody else's work. And it's to remain curious and to see, okay, but how do they see it? And how did they come to that realization? There's a simple example that I once heard this saying that your friends is like the buttons of an elevator that either take you up or down. Dr. Rob Thompson from America. And I'm like, that is incredible. Like that is the best things I've ever heard. And then a couple of weeks later, I realized, but wait a minute. When I was in Standard 8 in 1998, my dad told me something similar when I was busy doing things I shouldn't be doing when you're 16, smoking and drinking and whatever the case might be. And so my dad says, like, Christo, I'm hearing things and I want to encourage you. Your friends will either take you up or they'll take you down. I want to encourage you, rather you take them up. And so when I heard that principle from Rob Thompson, thinking like it's the best thing since sliced bread, but then realizing, but wait, my dad taught me this like 15 years ago, and it's probably he heard it from his dad, and his dad heard it from his dad. And so becoming curious, but understanding in what setting that person understand the principle or whatever the truth is they want to tell you, gives you a wider range to realize, okay, I can impact and affect people in different industries, in different settings, in different areas, because I have these stories and these settings in which that thing has been framed.
That's beautiful. It reminds me of something that John Maxwell said, that charisma will get you into the door, but character is going to keep you there. And going back to what Odette said is, don't be a chop. Like, don't just drop in and drop out and not spend time with people, because the character part is going to build relationships. It's going to, that part of you. You can still be charismatic and still be friendly and still be a yellow, bright person. Yellows in the personalities, but you don't have to, your character can still ground you. And I think that comes down to the humility as well. Pastor Sia, you said something many years ago that until today has stayed with me and really helped me. And I think at expert level, we know the difference. So you were saying that some things God gives us to flow to us, and other things God gives us to flow through us. And that really made me think. That was a turnaround point for me in many things that day. And what I realized is, as an expert, some things are meant to flow to you so that you can solve problems, so that you can do stuff, show results, don't tell. And other things are meant to flow through you. In a way, many years later, I realized, I don't know if you know it, but I think you have the formula there. Because when it comes to you, you work it out, you get the patterns, you recognize it, you produce results, you multiply, you produce fruit. But when it's time to flow through you, then you can now empower others and get them to a higher level of success as well. So maybe you didn't notice back then, but because it was many years ago, but I think that could really be a pattern to expertise. I've seen it repeatedly. People, they wait for one more certificate or one more title or the next level of promotion, the next invitation, maybe just even validation from people before they actually step forward. But many times the evidence has already been there. The fruit is already there. So people, how do you recognize this? People come to you for this thing, okay? You've solved it more than once. You see the patterns that others are missing. We spoke about that. You can simplify. I agree with that so much, Odette. I think an expert can make very complicated things very simple. So you can already simplify what feels complicated to others, and you can help someone move from a confusion state, like Odette said, to a place of clarity. If you are that person and those things happen to you, then at some point, not calling yourself an expert is no longer humility, I think, Pastor C, but it's actually hiding from the potential, the call, the purpose, and the gifts that God has placed on the inside of you, and is saying, it's time for you now to flow to you. It's flown to you. Now it's time for you so that it can flow through you. And I think if people trust you with those kind of problems that you need to solve, then I think we need to stop pretending that we are carrying the solutions, and we need to help them with it.
Yeah, very true. I think there's value in what you just said there. I've seen this happening is that in some settings, people don't recognize what it is you carry, where in other settings, people drink from that well. And in the beginning, I was thinking that these people don't recognize what I carry. And I don't think it's that. Well, in some instances it is, but I don't think in totality, maybe. I'll use this example. So many years ago, Boots and All, it was a rugby program that started on Emmet. Many of you might remember it. But Nas Botha was one of the commentators, or was one of the guys that hosted it with Darren Scott. And so they would just analyze the teams playing on the weekend. And Nas would normally say this. He would say, it's a great team on paper. This team on paper is unbeatable. But then he said, however, the game of rugby is played on grass. And so the fact that you can't deliver the results on the pitch, on the grass, doesn't mean you don't have the ability to analyze the game of rugby and give advice to the players that are playing. And it's to realize that, you said it earlier about expertise sits in areas. And it's to understand that expertise sits in areas, but also you are called to certain areas to bring your expertise. In other areas, you are not called, per se, to bring that, or not called, let me rather use another word. It's just simply that that's not your role within the room. And the quicker I start realizing that, it's not that people don't value what you have. It's simply just sit in the room and just be. Learn what you can learn and move on. And don't try and force down what I know on every single person that I believe needs to know it. And I think that's where self-awareness comes in, is to be aware of your own abilities, your own personal influence within certain areas, but equally understand where other people fit in. And exactly what Odette said, that an expert has the know-how to bring the right people in the room. And so how do we then get the best result for the individual, whether it's me or not, whether it flows through me directly or as a result of something that I've said or that I've done?
It's so powerful. And it also teaches us that experts can navigate not only rooms, but situations, emotions, feelings, circumstances. Odette, what did life teach you that a course could never have taught you?
I think the very first for me around expertise was probably when I was working with the bank, what feels like a lifetime ago. I was in a room full of legit experts who also had legit egos, and we're all men. So, I mean, it was fun. And I used to be the one who wouldn't say anything. I would not speak up because I never felt like I had the authority to speak. Like to Pastor C's previous points, my perception was that kinders word gesien en nie gehoor nie, so I don't have a voice to speak. It's not something I knew how to do. I had to learn how to do that. And my perspective, no. In addition to that, I didn't know how to say it without offending the people in the room, because if you can imagine a bunch of men with testosterone who all think they are the smartest, it was never just a conversation. It was always a fight. It was always, I'm smarter than you. And it came out in the conversation. It was rough. So I always shied away from saying anything, from giving my perspective, because I didn't want to get into the fight. I was worried that I was going to get a beating verbally, and sometimes I did. And I didn't say anything. So one day my boss came to me and she said, look, the reality is, if you have any hope of growing, you need to start speaking up. And I'm like, well, I mean, there isn't two words edgewise that you could get into this room. There's like, it's not going to happen. These men are all just like the whole time, and everyone's smarter than everyone else. And I didn't have their credentials. I started at the bank. I worked my way through the ranks, and I studied while I was working. I mean, I only got my degree in 2019. So I didn't have those things. And for a long time, I thought, well, because I didn't have the paper, I shouldn't speak. No, actually, what I didn't realize is because I never said anything, when I did say something, people listened. And it didn't sink in for me at the time until we had another leadership course and the facilitator turned around and said, "Isn't that interesting?" He goes, "All these people are fighting and you're just sitting there quietly, but the moment you speak, everyone listens." And I was like, oh, okay. That for me crystallized something that I've pretty much carried on from that point forward. Yes, to your point, there are things that you are an expert in. Know where your grace is. Also, you don't have to shout. Experts don't shout. You speak when it's appropriate to speak. And if it's not, that's okay. And if they don't want to hear your voice, that's okay too. Like, move on. Shake the dust off your feet and move on.
Powerful. It's leading the room to and through the problem as well. Knowing when to speak, knowing when not to speak. I think expertise is not just what you know. I think we've definitely established that. So on some closing thoughts, it's not just what you know. It's what you've integrated in all the areas of your life and places around your life. It's the difference between somebody who can just quote an answer. I like what you said earlier about quoting a ChatGPT or reading ChatGPT. It's the difference between somebody who can do that and quote the answer and someone who can carry the room through the problem by saying what needs to be said at the time that it is said. Because otherwise, it's going to sound like what you just explained in that room. But the expert is the person, when they do speak, change comes. And I think if you're listening today, I want you to ask yourself some of these questions that we spoke about today. Where do you find yourself in the area of expertise that you want to develop? Think about those stages that I mentioned, like, are you a novice, advanced, beginner? Where do you find yourself? Ask yourself, what do people constantly ask me for help with? Because that is the thing that people recognize on your life. What problem can you solve faster because you've done it or seen it or solved it so many times? Okay? Where have you earned that pattern recognition? So where do you see that pattern repeating all the time? And then you go at it, you solve the problem, you get the results. You can ask yourself, what have I studied? No one of us are saying studies are bad, not good, not recognized. We are just saying use it appropriately. So what have you studied? What have you practiced? Very importantly, I think we all need to ask ourselves, what have we failed at? Because a lot of people fail at things and then they rebuild it and they refine it. They go at it again. It's not about the amount of times you fall. It's about the amount of times that you get up. So what can your results point to? Maybe when you're leading in a personal capacity or expertise, then you just change it to people. So who have I changed? Who have I helped? Who have I grown? Who have I strengthened because of the things that I know? And if you can honestly answer these questions, then maybe you are not in the beginning anymore. And you might actually be standing in some earned authority and closer or close enough or be at the place of being an expert. So I hope today's things, the conversation, the aspects, the points really helped you. Once again, Odette, Pastor C, really, really powerful nuggets that have been given to people that they can take from this podcast and they can actually just go and implement. And I think you do not need to know everything to call yourself an expert, but you do need the evidence. We spoke about that today. You do need the integrity, the character. You do need the results. Also important what Pastor C said is you need the humility to keep learning because it's one thing to become an expert, it's another to remain an expert and at that level. So you need the humility so that you can keep learning. And then I think lastly is you're going to need the courage so that you don't shrink. Because a lot of people reach a level of expertise and then you need to become really brave to keep it there and to keep learning. So thank you for joining today. Once again, off topic and on point. If you've got any questions, you're welcome to drop it into the chat and we can answer them in the episode. And let us know where you are at in your journey of becoming an expert.